Okay, so we're now at the communication, the nonverbal communication. So we have ended our verbal communication just now. We're going through the nonverbal communication process. So the nonverbal communication is a process of generating meaning using behavior other than words, rather than thinking of nonverbal communication as the opposite or as a separate from verbal communication. It's more accurate to view them as operating side by side as part of the same system. Yet, as part of the same system, they still have important differences, including how the brain processes them. For instance, nonverbal communication is typically governed by the right side of the brain, and verbal is by the left side. If you're right-handed, if the dominant is on left and it's another way around, it's called the decusation. So it's either you're dominant on the right or you're dominant on the left. So non-characteristics of nonverbal communication is present in most interpersonal conversations, conveys more information than verbal communication, and usually believed over verbal communication, as it is harder to hide or fake our nonverbal clues. It is primarily means of communicating our emotion, and it is meta-communicative. So, our emotions is communicated. The tone of the voice, that is also a nonverbal. The facial expression, the hand movement, the gestures, postures. Even postures can be communicated, like decorticate and decerebrate. Those are communication process. The client is comatose, but you don't know what's happening within the client based on their neurologic system. You just have to look at decortication and decerebration. Even anisocoria, when your pupils are not dilating at the same time. One is satokichi, satobesar, that's anisocoria. That's a communication process of telling you that the brain is herniating. There's lack of oxygenation. Dilations of pupils that doesn't constrict when there's flashing of the light. It's a communication process. There's a lot of communication with that. It's either morphine toxicity or substance abuse. It can be methamphetamine hydrochloride. So those are communication process, and those are nonverbal communications present in most interpersonal conversations, and conveys more information than verbal communication, especially when the client wants to tipo you with pain. There are a lot of referred pains that you can use for determining the real diagnosis of the client, like cholecystectomy or appendicitis. They can have rebound pains, and they can have pain on the epigastric area, especially the kidneys that are having troubles. They have referred pain from behind your flanks. The flank pain, it can be a referred pain to the kidneys. And heart, they can have angina pectoris, referred pain to the left shoulder. Okay, so there are different kinds of referred pains that is a non-verbal communication, present in most interpersonal conversation, and it's usually believed over verbal communication, because sometimes you want to minta puji. There's patients that suka minta puji sa Jasibab. They're so bored in the hospital, they want to show you that there is pain, but you can verify this by nonverbal communication, as it is harder to hide or fake nonverbal communication clues in comparison to the verbal communication. It is primary means of communicating emotions, and it is meta-communicative. So the nonverbal leakage, the definition is the unintentional transmissions of information through nonverbal channels of communication, occurs when people are unsuccessful in attempting to control messages sent nonverbally, while people are successful in controlling facial expressions. Leakage occurs in the arms, hands, feet, and legs, and these are difficult to control, and therefore there will be leakage of miscommunication. There will be something that you can non-verbally communicate, such as the blood pressure, the heart rate, the temperature. Okay, those are the non-verbal communications, and you can validate it by monitoring it yourself. Okay, the electrocardiography are also nonverbal communications. For example, the patient is telling you, I have sakit jantung, ada myocardial infarction pula, maumati sudah. Tapi in the EKG, it shows a normal spontaneous rhythm, a normal heart rhythm, normal sinus rhythm, NSR. So, there are a lot of leakages of miscommunication that can be validated by nonverbal communications. Different meanings in nonverbal communication. The eye contact. Eyes are significantly signaling confidence and in the West, but can be seen as rude or challenging in parts of the Asia and Middle East. So, especially in Malaysia, you don't look at people in the eye. They hate it. They don't like strangers looking at them eye to eye, because if you don't know who you're looking at, don't look at them in the eye. But in the West, they like to have eye contacts with people, and they like to show eye contact with others if they are, if they're trying to communicate. If you have eye contact with your parents and they're angry with you, they will communicate it as rudeness. You don't look at them. You look down when you're being scolded by your parents. Some cultures have different meanings of nonverbal communication. Also, there are gender rules around eye contact with many Eastern culture, discouraging women from making an eye contact, especially in the Middle East. I have been to Dubai, and you cannot look at women in the eye, especially if their husbands beside them. Especially in Somalia, because I've been to Somalia as well. In Dubai and Somalia, those are the very famous Muslim countries that you should not put eye contact with women, especially if you are not related to them or you don't know them. Even if you know them and the husband is there, you cannot look at them in the eye. The women cannot be seen even in the eyes. The eyes is the only thing that is left open, and you still cannot look at it. So those are also discouraging nonverbal communications. With regards to culture, it conveys authority or sexual interest. So nonverbal communication can be miscommunicated based on their culture or their religion or their settings, the settings where they belong to. Okay. Touch is also a nonverbal communication. Those who live in Asia tend to take a more conservative approach when it comes to touching, or with a bow, typically replacing a handshake. Because in Japan, you don't touch anybody you don't use your hands to touch anybody. You have to just bow and do the folding of the hands, and that's the only gesture that you can replace the touch with. Or sometimes in the nursing context, touch is very important. Touch therapy, especially for neonatals, those who are neonates, who always cry, they want the touch, they want the warmth of a touch of the nurse or somebody that is alive. They want to know that they are alive as well. They want to feel the life that they can have, because that is also a communication. When the baby is crying, it's communicating. Okay, so it's trying to send a message as well. Not just you as an adult, also the neonates are trying to send messages. And touch is a nonverbal communication to them, because they cannot understand the language that you speak. Even your facial expressions, sometimes they are confused. But the touch is the only thing that makes them communicate with people. Okay? Gestures, pointing out at someone, is an insult in most parts of the world. But in some places, you need to point out to them in order for them to receive the communication gestures. Sometimes there are a lot of cultures that can miscommunicate nonverbal communications. Okay, different meanings in nonverbal communication. They are physical distances. Sometimes it is best never enter anyone's personal space, especially nowadays there's pandemic. Physical distancing has to be implemented. Long time ago, physical distancing is not a problem. Since 2019, December, up to present, physical distancing is a major issue. Okay, especially in nonverbal communication. Stay away, 2 feet away from people, in order for you not to transmit infections. That is also a nonverbal communication. Facial expressions for happiness, sadness, anger, and fear are universal. The Japanese, for example, try to remain a neutral facial expression by giving that showing your emotions are burden to other people. So stop showing your emotions to some cultures that does not require emotion because they get more burdened by your facial expressions. Okay, different meanings in nonverbal communication. Appearances. Some places in the United States are fine with very lax appearances. Sometimes people goes out and go shopping with their pajamas, wearing pajamas, going out shopping. My dad is from Texas. He's a Texan. My mom is Filipina, so they have different cultures. And my dad goes out to the mall shopping with their pajamas, and he sometimes wears shorts. But my mom goes to the mall shopping with bombastic appearance. So there's a difference between the two. They are also appearing in a nonverbal communication way, and they are sometimes offended when you show your legs or back, or you show your collarbones in a very uh, offensive way in some cultures. But when you watch in Western culture all those formal wears, all those formal things, a girl is a formal wear is wearing something formal if he's showing her collarbones and the backless gowns. Those are the formal wears in some Western countries. Okay, in some Asian countries, the girls cannot wear all those attire. You have to cover everything from head up to toe. That is a formal wear. That's also an appearance. Okay, the posture as people speak to you and nod enough to show you are paying attention to what they say is also a nonverbal communication. Stay mindful of where you sit in meetings. In some cultures, there's a strict hierarchy or who gets to sit where. So some cultures says that the head of the family should be sitting at this chair and the others should be sitting on the side. So those are nonverbal communications. Okay, the cultures that shows that the hierarchy should be there. You sit here, you are in the center because you are in the hierarchy position. Okay, in some cultures they don't really mind where you sit down as long as there's a sitting position. Okay, so those are the postures that can have miscommunication on nonverbal communications. The paralanguage, these are the study of the paralanguages. It focuses on how you say what you say and the tone of your voice, the loudness, softness, rate of speech, and the words we choose in an accent. By changing the emphasis, we can change the entire meaning of the sentence. Just by the tone. Okay, just by showing that you have a tone of your voice and you have the loudness and the softness, the rate of speech, and the words you choose in an accent, you can have emphasis of what can change in the entire meaning of the sentence. So the paralanguage has several components: voice quality, voice qualifiers, voice characteristics, and vocal segregates. So the voice qualities are the volume and the rate of speech, and the voice qualifiers are temporary variations in pitch, volume, and rate of speech are known as voice qualifiers. Vocal characteristics are the sounds which serve to communicate some meanings are called vocal characteristics. So these are components of the paralanguages. And vocal segregates meaningless words. The people who doesn't have tongue, the OKU, they cannot speak, but they can make words, they can make voices, they can make sounds like those are the paralanguages. They can have sign languages, but they have sounds that comes out of their mouth, and that they are angry, that they are sad, that these languages can have sound effects, and they punctuate or pace the sentence. They are called vocal segregates. So those are the language of the sounds. You don't need languages. The sounds are enough to convey the codes of the messages that you're trying to send. Okay, kinesics, the body posture, the body movement, and the facial expression. The postures, the way people sit or stand, can reveal a lot about their attitudes and emotions. Gestures can be four types: emblems, adapters, illustrators, and regulators. So they have the emblems of the gestures. You know, they can have adapters, illustrators, and regulators. So the emblems are gestures that have meaning, such as you understand. Like, okay, these are the emblems. When you have understood, good. Okay, so sometimes you don't need to speak it out. You just have to show the emblem that is mostly signifying that you have understood. Okay, those are the gestures. Adapters, an unintentional movement that are frequently interpreted as sign of nervousness. These are manifestations of something that you are trying to convey as an emotion. These are adapters. When you're trying to bite your fingers, it's a manifestation or adapter that you're nervous. When you're trying to put your hand like this, or rub your hand like that, or clap your hands, it's a manifestation that you have appreciated what you have seen. You know, the clapping of the hands. And sometimes when you're running out of time, you always look at your watch, like this. Those are adapters and components of nonverbal communication. Illustrators, the gestures that go with what they say verbally tend to depict of what being said, like a bow like this. This is our illustrators. Or a hi, those are illustrators. Okay, nonverbal communications are illustrators as well. And the regulators are the nod, gestures that control the communication exchange. Head nodding like this, or head nodding like that, or head nodding like this. You have understood? Yeah. Okay? Sometimes we nod our head like this. That means yes. And this means no. Sometimes, those are illustrators as well. So they are the nods, okay? And they are regulators. They're called regulators. There's nothing wrong with regulators of nods. And those are gestures that control communication exchange. So a facial expression are components of nonverbal communication. They play a vital role in communicating various messages, expressions of the eyes, and considerations that are indicating honesty, confidence, openness, and interest. These are components of non-verbal communication. Happiness, confusion. The facial expression shows you that you're confused, or you're sad, or you're happy, or surprised, are angry, they're excitement. There are a lot of verbal communication, non-verbal communications that can be sent and interpreted. Okay, the components of nonverbal communication is the proxemics, the study of how to use physical spaces around them. Sometimes a public speech must be like so far away, a distance of 4 meters away, and the social speech is 3 meters away. Personal is like 0.5. Now, personal speech is about 1 meter away. You cannot have a proximity. Proxemics is a proximity. Now, you cannot be so proximal to each other. You have to have a social distancing. Chronemics, and the chronemics is the amount of time we spend on a task, also indicates how much important we give them, and the mode of dress that we do is also a component of non-verbal communication. So, as a conclusion, oral communication is thus a mixture of verbal and non-verbal messages, and a good communicator is one whose non-verbal cues or authenticate and reinforce these words. As the old folk saying goes, action speaks louder than words. When you tell them you love them, but you don't really act on what you say, it speaks louder than word. So if your actions believe your words, there is every possibility that the listeners may choose to believe your actions rather than your words. Sometimes they see more of how you act rather than how you say things. All right, so the action speaks louder than words. Okay, that is the nonverbal communication. So, we have ended our session for today. And put a thumbs up as your nonverbal communication that you understood or you like.